Hello, everyone, and welcome Tanya Miller and myself to Leadership Academy podcast. This one is going to be really interesting, and hopefully, we're going to keep it in a very timely fashion because it is on time management and efficiencies. Tanya, when I say time management and efficiencies, what is the first thing that comes to mind?
The first thing that comes to mind is giving yourself the permission to own your time and be responsible for your time. How's that for deep?
That is very deep. I think that during the pandemic, we all had a change of our mindset around time efficiencies and obviously around priorities. And we've seen some significant changes that occurred during the pandemic and now coming out of the pandemic as folks are going back to the office. What do you think is going to stick from the last couple of years?
So I think people really had a realization that we had fallen into a trap of just being responsive constantly, to always being on. And when many of us brought our offices into our home and really had our personal life and our office really meshed together, we realized that that can be really dangerous to always feel like you have to be on and be available. And in the healthcare world in particular, we feel that push to do that because we assume that there's somebody's life at the other end that really needs our attention and focus. And a lot of times we create emergencies when there really aren't emergencies. So I think the pandemic's really shown us that, hey, we need to do a better job of creating those barriers and creating the time we need to be actually more efficient in what we do.
I think having a physical office or a physical space, whether it be in your home or at your when you drive to your office at work, that gives you some physical barriers that helps with that time management. But what are some other advice that you could give to leaders to create those barriers when sometimes the physical barriers don't occur?
Yeah, that's a great question. You can create physical barriers in the online world. So some really good examples is using your calendar to block time for projects. We go into a meeting and we get all of these tasks that we have to do out of a meeting, and we never value those tasks and say they take time and space, not just to create them, but to think about them. So blocking off time and allowing yourself time to think and to create really does help. It shows other people that, hey, don't schedule a meeting here. I'm busy doing important work. I'm thinking about this project. I'm putting this project together. And you have a much better end product that doesn't have to be revised and changed, which actually ends up taking more time. The
And,
other
and
thing that I go ahead, sorry.
no, finish, Tanya. I'm sorry.
Uh, the other thing that really creates barriers is it's okay to tell other people that I have certain things I need to do and I'm not available to you unless it's an emergency, and I'll clearly define that emergency during these particular times. And we're fearful of doing that a lot of times, especially in healthcare.
I was going to echo what you were saying about being a healthcare provider. You know, there's a statement in business that we've all heard that your emergency does not create urgency on my part, or your urgency does not create an emergency on my part. What are some? And I've been around you long enough, Tanya, that I've seen you give some great advice to folks. What is your advice around email? Because email seems to be one of the ones that is a big time consumer for folks.
So emails go back to clear expectations. It is so important to set clear expectations for what you will and won't do to those around you, to your team members and to your peers. So telling people that I respond to emails at this time and this time during the day. If I receive your email in the morning, I'll look at it by noon or 1 o'clock in the afternoon because I'm working on projects. Set those expectations for people. At first, it will seem odd to do so, but you'll see that you are much more efficient and people actually respect those boundaries when you tell them what they are.
That's fantastic advice. Another piece of advice that I've heard you give is give yourself time to think. And can you expound a little bit about that?
Sure. We fill our days, one meeting after another. Hopefully have a bathroom break in between. And, I'm going to answer phone calls. I'm going to get these emails done. And a lot of times we have to make really important decisions. We're making up decisions about people's lives. And we have to create processes and workflows that make our teams who are caring for patients more efficient. That takes time to process and think. And we oftentimes undervalue that time as daydreaming or wasting time, when in actuality, it's very productive. So, the scheduling in time, just allow yourself to think about a project or think about a process before you put it on paper or start to work with it, can be very valuable and save you time in the future.
And that's one of the things about this leadership academy that you've developed, that giving people the time for self-development, giving people the time to increase their skill set. If you've ever read Malcolm Gladwell, one of his tenets is, in order to master something, you have to spend, I think, 40,000 hours. Is that correct, Tanya? Or somewhere in that
10,000
ballpark.
hours.
How
Yeah,
how many?
10,000 hours. 10,000
10,000,
hours.
10,000
Yeah.
hours is one quarter of what I said. 10,000 hours to become proficient. And sometimes that involves reading and studying new concepts and new ideas. That's one of the things our Leadership Academy allows people to take the time to improve the skill set of leadership. Because in leadership, what you have to remember is you are modeling behavior for the folks that are under you. So if you have folks in your agency that are complaining about how long certain tasks take, it's hard to model great behavior of time management if you're not practicing great behavior of time management. Is that a fair statement?
Couldn't have said it better myself, Sherry. If you are reacting, and if you're spending your whole day reacting to emails, reacting to phone calls, acting like everything is a sense of urgency, you create that environment where everybody else feels that sense of urgency and that stress level is always high. If you create time and space in your day and you really truly understand the difference between an urgent and emergent situation and just reactive action, you can really create a much calmer environment where people can really focus on tasks and get things done.
I think that's so crucial, and giving your staff some of that advice from a place of practice is going to be so much more powerful, and they're going to take that in and realize, hey, if it works for her, maybe I can try that. Any other efficiencies that you wanted to share, or time management snippets before we conclude?
So there's a whole session on email efficiency, and it's a lot to cover, but we are really inefficient in emails. And just a quick snippet of what we talk about in the email efficiency is creating a way to organize your emails for your team. And that can be by making your subject headers very standardized. And by doing so, you allow people to understand what you need up front in that subject line. For example, when you need a decision made from an email you're giving, putting decision in the subject line, tell somebody right away, hey, I need you to read this and make a decision. That can be so time saving by just having people know what you need from the email by simply looking at the subject line.
That is so true. And I know that you've given some great advice and some great leadership ideas for how we communicate through emails and when we should stop communicating through emails. Can you touch on that briefly?
Sure. So I have a rule: three emails back and forth, pick up the telephone. We have become a society that likes to hide behind our electronic devices. And we end up creating more frustration and more confusion because we try to solve things by going back and forth in emails or text when it could have been resolved in a quick phone call. So set some boundaries for your team around how many times you go back and forth in emails and understand the power of picking up the phone. The other thing that's so important is understanding people's different disc behavioral styles and how they like to be communicated to in an email format. Too much for us to go through in a quick discussion here, Sherry, but understanding that different people like to get information differently. And if you just change how you email a little bit, you can make information more palatable to the person on the other end.
And at the bottom line, Tanya, it's about creating an open communication and creating a safe space for folks to ask for what they want, get it in the way that they want it, and become more efficient and have better time management. Any closing thoughts?
Sure. Two things to remember: it's about creating boundaries and giving clear expectations. When you do that around your time and how you want to work, other people will respect that and you will be more efficient.
That's fantastic. Thank you guys for listening, and I hope that you take a moment to check out the Leadership Academy and join the Leadership Academy along with all the other folks that you can learn from on that platform. And we look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks, Tanya.
Carrie,